You open your eyes. It is 1920, and London is still exhaling after the most devastating war in human history. Nearly 1 million British men never came home from the trenches of France and Belgium, and the city that surrounds this apartment is a strange mixture of grief and forced optimism. The empire still stretches across a quarter of the globe on paper, but on these streets you can feel the cracks. Unemployment is rising. Veterans sell matches on street corners, and yet the city moves. It always moves. The morning arrives not with an alarm clock, those are still a luxury for most, but with the unmistakable sound of the street below, the iron clang of a milk cart, the clatter of hooves on wet cobblestone, a vendor calling out the morning edition of the Daily Mail. Through the thin walls you hear your neighbour coughing. It is a damp November morning, and the cold has already crept under the door. The air inside the apartment smells of coal dust, last night's boiled cabbage, and something faintly metallic, the pipes perhaps, or the old radiator that hisses weakly in the corner. You pull the rough wool blanket tighter before your feet even touch the floor. You're living in a converted Victorian terrace house in an area like Bethnal Green or Islington, a building originally designed for a single middle-class family, now subdivided into 3 or 4 separate dwellings to meet the crushing demand for housing after the war. Your apartment occupies the first floor, roughly 45 to 55 square metres, 3 rooms plus a narrow corridor that doubles as a storage space. The walls are thick London stock brick, but the internal partitions are lath and plaster, thin, uninsulated, and alive with sound. Every argument from the flat above, every footstep, every dropped pot travels directly into your ceiling. The plaster on your walls is yellowed and slightly damp near the skirting boards. You've learned not to look too closely at the corners. The floor is bare. Wooden boards, dark with age and warped in places where moisture has worked its way up from below. There is no underfloor heating, no carpet in the hallway. Your feet know every cold spot by heart. The windows are single-pane sash windows, and the gap between the frame and the wall lets in a thin, persistent draft that no amount of rolled-up newspaper has fully solved. Electricity has been installed in this building, but only barely. A single bare bulb hangs from the centre of each room on a braided fabric cable. The wiring is rudimentary, and the landlord has made clear that you're not to plug in anything beyond what is already there. Heat comes from a coal fireplace in the main room and a small iron radiator fed by a shared boiler in the basement, which the building's caretaker lights each morning when he remembers. You step into the sitting room, which is also, depending on the hour, the dining room, the reading room, and the place where guests are received. The centrepiece is a horsehair stuffed sofa upholstered in dark green velvet, faded along the armrests to something closer to grey. It is heavy, unimaginably heavy by modern standards, and has not moved from its position against the wall since the day it arrived. To sit on it is to feel the springs shifting beneath you, the horsehair compressing in unpredictable ways. It smells of tobacco and wool and thyme. Against the opposite wall sits a small oak sideboard, its surface scattered with the objects of daily life. A ceramic bowl, a folded newspaper, a box of matches. Above it hangs a framed print of the English countryside, slightly crooked, the glass spotted with age. The curtains are heavy brocade drawn against the draught, and they muffle the street sounds just enough to create a sense of enclosure that is almost comforting. In the corner, an Echo or Marconi wireless set, a recent acquisition, one of the first radio receivers to enter working-class and lower-middle-class homes, sits on a side table. It is a point of enormous pride. In the evenings, the BBC's fledgling broadcasts fill the room with a crackling, miraculous voice from nowhere. For now, in the morning silence, it sits dormant. A single electric bulb casts a flat, pale light. The room feels serious. Life here is not decorated. It is endured with dignity. The kitchen is the most honest room in the apartment. It does not pretend to be anything other than what it is. A place of labour. The stove you cook on a cast-iron kitchen range, a hulking black beast that occupies an entire alcove. It burns coal, loaded through a small iron door on the front. Lighting it each morning is a ritual. You crumple old newspaper, arrange kindling in a specific pattern learned through trial and error, then add coal once the smaller wood catches. Getting the temperature right is entirely instinctive. There are no dials, no thermometers. You hold your hand near the oven door and count seconds. A roast requires a different fire than a simmer, and building that knowledge has taken years. The pots and pans? Your pans are cast iron and enamelled steel. The largest pot weighs several kilograms empty. Lifting it off the range when full of boiling water is a two-handed operation that demands full attention. These pans are not replaced. They are maintained, reseasoned, repaired. A cracked enamel pot is patched with tin, not discarded. Food preservation. There is no electric refrigerator. Instead, a slate-shelved cold larder sits in the corner of the kitchen, built into the exterior wall where the temperature stays naturally low. Milk is delivered fresh each morning and must be used the same day in warm weather. Butter is kept wrapped in a damp cloth. Meat purchased on Friday must be consumed by Saturday. You buy what you need, when you need it, in quantities that would seem remarkably small to a modern eye. Salt, vinegar and pickling are not nostalgic hobbies, they are survival strategies. Dishes and utensils. Your plates are thick white ironstone, heavy, chip-resistant and without decoration on the everyday set. There is a finer set of transfer-printed china kept in the sideboard for visitors, which is to say, rarely used. Cutlery is steel, the handles bone or cheap wood. Washing up is done in a ceramic sink with water heated on the range itself. There is no washing up liquid as you would know it. You use a block of hard household soap, worked into a lather with a stiff brush. The sink drains slowly, and the smell of grey water lingers. The bedroom is small enough that the bed dominates everything. It is a Victorian iron bedstead, black, with brass knobs on the posts, and its frame creaks with every movement. The mattress is flock-filled, cotton waste stuffed into a ticking cover, firmer than horsehair and less expensive, but prone to developing lumps and hollows that map exactly to the shapes of the bodies that sleep in it. Over the mattress, a bolster pillow. Across the top, 2 feather pillows, a cotton sheet, and then the weight. 2 wool blankets and a heavy eiderdown stuffed with goose down that traps warmth effectively, but is almost impossible to wash. You sleep under serious weight. In November, you often wear socks and a nightcap to bed. Clothing is stored in a dark mahogany wardrobe, a pre-war piece, solid and immovable, smelling of cedar and old fabric. A chest of drawers holds everything else. There are no built-in wardrobes, no closets. If a family of 4 shares this bedroom, and many do, the wardrobe becomes a source of daily negotiation. Children often sleep 2 to a bed, sharing both warmth and whatever illness one of them carries home from school. Privacy, as a concept, belongs to a different class of person. There is a bathroom. This is not something to take for granted. Many Londoners in 1920 still share outdoor privies with 4 or 5 neighbouring households. The fact that this apartment has an indoor toilet represents a genuine step toward modernity, and the landlord charges accordingly. The toilet is a high cistern water closet, the cistern mounted near the ceiling with a long pull chain. The flush is loud and definitive. The bowl is white porcelain, functional and cold. There is no toilet seat in the padded sense, just a plain wooden ring. Toilet paper, sold in boxes of individual flat sheets, is available but coarse. Many households supplement it with torn newspaper squares hung on a nail. The bath is a roll-top cast iron tub, deep and heavy with claw feet. Filling it is a committed undertaking. Water is heated in a back boiler connected to the kitchen range, or in a separate gas geyser mounted above the tub, a device that ignites with a startling whomp and must be treated with careful respect. A full hot bath for one person might take 30 minutes of preparation. Families bathe sequentially, youngest last in increasingly grey water. Soap is carbolic, strong, antiseptic and unmistakable in smell. There is no shampoo as a distinct product. Hair is washed with the same soap or with a preparation from the chemist. Skin conditions, scalp infections, and respiratory illnesses linked to damp living conditions are common. The bathroom, for all its relative modernity, cannot fully compensate for what the building itself cannot provide: genuine warmth and dry air. Life in this apartment is governed by physical maintenance in a way that modern life has almost entirely erased. The morning alone involves lighting the range, boiling water, preparing breakfast from scratch, and emptying the ash pan from the previous night's fire. There is no moment in the day that does not require active management of the domestic environment. The woman of the household, and it is almost always the woman, spends a significant portion of each day on tasks that technology has since eliminated. scrubbing floors on her knees, hand-washing clothes in a tin tub with a washboard, pressing them with a flat iron heated directly on the range, then heated again when it cools. Monday is wash day, and the entire flat fills with steam and the smell of wet wool. Shopping is done daily because storage is limited. Nothing is wasted. Neighbours are not optional. They are infrastructure. Sugar is borrowed. Children are minded. Illness is collectively managed. The woman upstairs knows when your baby has a fever before your husband does. Privacy is thin, community is thick, and the building itself functions as a social organism in a way that modern apartment living rarely replicates. You would be struck first by the weight of everything. Not metaphorically, literally. The furniture cannot be rearranged on a whim. The pots cannot be lifted with one hand. Even the doors, solid wood and swollen with damp, require a firm push. The physical effort required simply to maintain daily life is constant and invisible in historical accounts but overwhelming in person. Then the smell. Coal smoke permeates everything. The curtains, the bedding, the food, your hair, mixed with the smell of unwashed bodies. Bathing once a week is standard, sometimes less in winter. And the persistent background note of damp plaster and mildew. The air in this apartment is thick in a way that no amount of open windows fully resolves. What separates your life from the person who slept in this bed in 1920 is not intelligence, not strength, not character. It is almost entirely technology, the accumulated solution to problems so basic that we have forgotten they were ever problems at all. Refrigeration, hot running water, antibiotics, central heating. These are not luxuries. They are the difference between a life consumed by maintenance and a life with room for something else. And yet, there is something in that coal-lit sitting room, with the wireless crackling its first broadcasts into a stunned and grieving city, that deserves more than condescension. Those people were not waiting to be rescued by the future. They were living, fully, daily, with everything they had. The question worth sitting with is this: what are we enduring right now in our own apartments that people 50 years from now will look back on with the same mixture of sympathy and disbelief?